You ever wake up one morning and decide, today's the day I finally get my life together? That was me last Tuesday. I told my wife, I'm going to be a responsible adult. She said, good luck, which I thought was a little rude, but fair. So first thing I do, pay the bills. Easy, right? I sit down at the computer, open 6 tabs, and suddenly I'm locked out of every account I've ever made. Now I'm on the phone with customer service, explaining that yes, my mother's maiden name really is Johnson, and no, I didn't forget my password, I just updated it 47 times. I'm feeling good. I'm adult and I decide to cook a real meal. I Google easy, healthy dinner. The internet lies. 2 hours later, I've got smoke pouring out of the oven, the smoke alarm screaming. I'm on a chair waving a towel like I'm landing airplanes. My wife walks in, looks at the chaos, and goes, "You're making chicken?" I said, "I was." Then I remember taxes. Nothing makes you feel less adult than doing taxes. I'm scrolling through receipts trying to figure out if a burrito counts as a business expense. I call my accountant, he says no, unless the burrito was part of a motivational seminar. I said, it was very motivational. At this point, I'm done. I've paid half a bill, burned dinner, and confessed to tax fraud over lunch. I sit down, exhausted, proud that I at least tried. That's when my daughter comes in holding a bill and says, "Dad, you paid the wrong account." Apparently, sent our electric money to Netflix. So now we have no power, but the crown is fully paid for. You ever notice that being an adult is mostly just apologizing to yourself? Sorry, man, I thought we were ready for this. I used to think my parents had it all figured out. Now I know they were just better at hiding panic. So, yet tried to be responsible. It went horribly wrong. But the bright side, the house might be dark, but at least I finally have time to reflect on all my life choices as long as my phone battery holds out. Good night, remember? If you ever feel like a failure at adulting, you're probably just doing it right. You ever wake up one morning and say to yourself, all right, this is it. Today I'm finally gonna get my life together. That sentence should come with a warning label, because the moment you declare it, the universe hears you and says, oh, really? Let's see about that. I remember the morning I decided to be responsible. I woke up early, which was already suspicious behavior for me. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and for some reason, I thought I was capable of handling my life. I made coffee, black coffee, because I read somewhere that's what responsible adults drink. No sugar, no cream, just disappointment in a cup. Took a sip and instantly regretted every decision I'd ever made. But I was committed. I looked around my kitchen and thought, this is the day I become a grown-up. There's a weird kind of confidence that hits you when you say that. You feel like you're about to run a company, pay off a mortgage, and solve world peace all before noon. I opened my laptop, ready to pay bills, check emails, handle life. Within 10 minutes, I was locked out of everything I own. Apparently, being responsible also means remembering 47 different passwords that all need one capital letter. 2 numbers, the blood of your firstborn child. Every time I reset one password, it would politely inform me that it couldn't be the same as my last 10 passwords. I don't even remember one password, much less 10 at one point. I was so desperate I started guessing random words like coffee, help, and responsible adult 123. None of them worked. By now, my coffee was cold and my motivation was dying. I called customer service because that's what responsible people do when they've already given up. After waiting on hold for 20 minutes, listening to a flute version of Don't Stop Believin', a nice woman answered and asked me to verify my identity. She said, "What's your mother's maiden name?" And I froze like I'd been asked a riddle to open a treasure chest. When I finally answered, she said, "That's not what we have on file." And I thought, ma'am, I'm pretty sure my mom hasn't changed her name since I was born. By the time I got access back, I'd spent 2 hours proving I was myself, and honestly, I wasn't even sure anymore. That's when I realized being a responsible adult isn't about getting things done. It's about surviving the battle between good intentions and technical difficulties all before lunch. You ever try to do something simple like pay a bill, and somehow it turns into a full-blown war between you and technology? That's exactly what happened when I decided to handle my online payments like a mature, responsible adult. Sat down at my desk with confidence, thinking, how hard can this be? I opened my laptop, logged into the first website. Within seconds, the site hit me with that one sentence that ruins every good day. "We don't recognize this device." I've had this laptop for 5 years. It's literally the only device I've ever used. But apparently today it woke up and chose betrayal. I tried logging in again. Suddenly I was trapped in a maze of security questions. What was the name of your first pet? I had a fish named Bubbles when I was 5, but apparently that wasn't the right answer. So now I'm sitting there arguing with a website, saying out loud, "I was Bubbles!
Don't gaslight me."
Then it asks me to verify my identity by sending a code to my old phone number, one I haven't had since Obama was president. I'm starting to wonder if this website knows more about my past than I do. After 10 minutes of pure chaos, get locked out for suspicious activity. Yeah, the suspicious activity is me trying to give you money. Finally, call customer service, which is always a fun experience. I get a robot voice that says, "Please say in a few words what you're calling about." I say, "Locked out of my account." It replies, "Okay, ordering new towels." At that point, I'm sweating like I'm in a hostage negotiation. I start talking to the computer like it's a person. "Listen, man, I'm not trying to steal anything. I'm just trying to pay my water bill before they turn it off." Finally, human picks up the phone and asks for my account number. I tell her, "That's the problem. I can't get to my account." She laughs like this is all normal, puts me on hold for another 10 minutes. The hold music sounds like it was recorded in a dentist's office in 1984. When she comes back, she says, "Okay, I've reset your password." I log in, and it immediately says, "Password expired." I actually laughed out loud. You ever reach that point where frustration becomes comedy? That's adulthood. You start your day trying to pay a bill, and by the end, you're questioning the meaning of life. That's when I realized being responsible doesn't mean being in control. It just means you've learned to smile while the universe messes with your way. Fight connection. You ever decide you're gonna cook something easy, and that one decision ruins your entire day? They're smart. That's what happened when I thought I'd make dinner like a real adult. I'd been feeling good, proud even. I told my wife, "Don't worry about dinner tonight, I got it." You ever say something with that much confidence, knowing deep down you absolutely don't got it? I opened my laptop and typed in easy, "Healthy meal for beginners," because I wanted something simple but impressive. The internet gave me a recipe that said ready in 20 minutes, which is apparently code for you will destroy your kitchen and your spirit. It started off okay. Chopped an onion like I'd seen people do on cooking shows, except those people weren't crying because the onion reminded them of all their failures. Then I turned on the stove and realized there are about 7 different heat levels, none of which makes sense. High is a lie. It's either not cooking at all, or it's turning your food into lava. I added oil to the pan. Within seconds, it started popping like fireworks. I jumped back, waving a spatula like a white flag, yelling, "Come in peace." Still, I kept going. The recipe said, "Season to taste," which sounds harmless, but that's basically a dare. I started sprinkling things like a magician, no clue what I was doing. A little salt, a little pepper, a dash of paprika. Next thing I know, I've invented a flavor the human tongue wasn't meant to experience. Smoke starts rising, the fire alarm goes off, and my dog's looking at me like, "This is why Mom cooks." I'm running around the kitchen with a towel, trying to wave the smoke away. That somehow makes it worse. Now it looks like I'm signaling for rescue from the Titanic. My wife walks in, looks around, and asks calmly, "What are you making?" I said, "Chicken." She looks at the blackened pan and says, "Was it alive recently?" The smoke alarm's still screaming. I'm sweating. The house smells like burnt regret. She just walks over and says, "Let's order pizza." That moment hit me hard. I set out to cook a meal like an adult, and all I proved was that I shouldn't be left alone with fire. So, you ever try to impress someone and end up filing an insurance claim? That's basically how my dinner went. You ever sit down to do something that's supposed to be simple, like filing your taxes, and instantly realize you've entered a world designed to make you question your entire existence? They're smart. That's exactly what happened when I decided to be a responsible adult and finally tackle my taxes. I thought I had a handle on it. Even printed out all my documents, organized them neatly, and felt a little surge of pride. This was going to be the day I proved I could manage my finances like a grown-up. Opened the tax software, and immediately it asked for my W-2s. I grabbed them, flipped through a few pages, realized I had no idea what half the numbers meant. Boxes labeled with letters and numbers I didn't recognize stared back at me. Hieroglyphics that only accountants could decipher. Then came the deductions section. The software cheerfully asked, "Did you have any business expenses this year?" I paused. I did buy a lot of coffee while working from home. Can I claim that? It fueled productivity, mostly memes, but still. I tried typing in coffee, and the system promptly rejected it. I felt personally attacked by technology. Then it asked about mileage. I thought about all the times I drove to the grocery store, the post office, and that one time I tried to help a friend move. Could that count? I started adding it up in my head, thinking, maybe I can save a little money here, and then I realized I had no receipts, just vague memories and a growing sense of panic. At some point, I decided to call my accountant. I explained the situation, trying to keep my calm adult voice. I think I may have accidentally deducted my burrito from Taco Bell as a business expense, I said. He laughed, which I didn't appreciate. I wanted support, not judgment. He patiently explained that, no, unfortunately, burritos do not count as legitimate deductions unless you were running a culinary consultancy, which I was not. Felt a mix of shame and relief. Shame that I tried, relief that someone else had the patience to explain what Schedule C actually meant. Hours passed. Every time I thought I was making progress, a new form appeared, like some kind of adult-themed video game where the boss level is just more paperwork. I found myself questioning every decision I had ever made. Did I really spend too much on coffee? Should I have rented a mailbox instead of using my home address? How did anyone survive this? At one point, I just stared at the screen and laughed. Filing taxes is supposed to be simple, right? But it's really just a test of patience, memory, your ability to argue with yourself about whether a burrito counts as work-related. You ever think you've finally handled all the bills and responsibilities, then realize you paid the wrong one? That's exactly what happened when I decided to be a responsible adult and double check my payments. I felt proud that day, like I had finally mastered the art of keeping my household running. I logged into my bank account, reviewed everything carefully, thought, okay, electricity, water, internet, done. I hit submit with confidence, leaned back, and took a deep breath. They're smart. That's when my daughter walked in holding a piece of paper and looked at me like I had just confessed to something terrible. She said, "Dade, did you just pay Netflix instead of the electric bill?" I froze because I wasn't entirely sure if she was joking. I looked at the account statement and realized she wasn't. Somehow, all the money I had painstakingly budgeted to keep our lights on, the very thing that allows us to see each other without bumping into furniture, had gone to Netflix. I stared at the screen, bewildered. The electric company was not impressed, but hey, at least the crown was fully paid for. There's a weird sense of irony in knowing your family can binge, watch period dramas in a completely dark house. I called the electric company to explain the situation, and of course, they didn't find it funny. I tried to make a case saying, well, technically, we are still enjoying the electricity emotionally. The person on the phone wasn't buying it. Reminded me that electricity is a little more literal than emotional satisfaction. I promised I'd fix it immediately. They're smart, which meant logging back into the bank account, navigating the labyrinth of online payment forms, and praying that this time my fingers wouldn't betray me again. By the time I finally sent the payment to the correct company, learned 3 important things. 1, double check everything. 2, don't assume technology has your back. And 3, never underestimate the power of a child holding a piece of paper like they're about to reveal a crime scene report. I also realized that responsible adults don't just pay bills. They survive a constant game of what else can go wrong today. Even after correcting the mistake, I sat back and reflected on how absurd the situation was. I had aimed for competence and accidentally created chaos. There's something humbling about realizing that the very thing that gives you power, the ability to manage your life, can be overturned by one simple misclick. It's a reminder that adulting is less about perfection and more about surviving mistakes with sense of dignity intact. If it's mostly just pretending while Netflix plays uninterrupted in the background. Ever get to the end of a long day of trying to be a responsible adult and realize that nobody really knows what they're doing? That's exactly how I felt after a week of paying bills, cooking meals, filing taxes, accidentally sending money to the wrong places. I had spent so much time trying to be perfect, trying to check every box. At the end of the day, I was exhausted, stressed, and questioning every life choice I'd ever made. There's a strange kind of humility that comes with realizing adulting isn't about surviving the control. It's about surviving the chaos with some kind of dignity. Even if that dignity is mostly imaginary, I looked around my house, which was in varying stages of disaster. The kitchen still smelled faintly of burnt chicken. The bills were scattered like confetti. My computer was still giving me judgmental error messages. I thought about all the advice I'd ever received about being a grown-up. Just stay organized, plan ahead, be responsible. Turns out, these are suggestions from a fantasy world where technology works perfectly and human error doesn't exist. I realized adulthood is mostly just a long series of small emergencies and awkward apologies, punctuated by fleeting moments where you feel like you have it together. Even my interactions with my family that day reminded me of this truth. My daughter looked at me like I was a cautionary tale. My wife shook her head at the chaos I'd created. My dog watched me like I was a character in a comedy show he didn't want to be part of. Every responsible decision I had made seemed to backfire in ways that were absurd, yet relatable. It's funny how adult life gives you these little reminders that control is an illusion. You can plan, prepare, and execute, still end up in situations that make you laugh and cry at the same time. I also realized that most adults are doing the same thing, pretending to have it all figured out, while secretly Googling how to unclog a sink, or asking someone on the phone, do I really need this form? The more I thought about it, the more I understood that adulting isn't a skill, it's an ongoing experiment in improvisation. Some days you succeed, some days you fail spectacularly, and most days you just survive while trying to look like you're in control. By the time I sat down at the end of that day, I felt a mix of exhaustion and amusement. The bills were mostly paid. Dinner had been ordered. The taxes were slightly less confusing than before. I realized that trying to be a responsible adult is less about perfection and more about resilience, patience, learning to laugh at yourself while the world keeps throwing small disasters your way. Adulting isn't about never failing. It's about surviving each day with some sense of humor intact. So, yeah, I tried to be a responsible adult. Paid bills to the wrong accounts, nearly burned down the kitchen, argued with tax software like it owed me money, and somehow managed to make Netflix more important than electricity. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, I survived. I laughed at my mistakes. My family laughed at me. And somehow we all made it through without anyone being seriously harmed. That's really what being an adult is, fumbling your way through chaos, apologizing along the way, and finding the humor in it all. Honestly, if you can laugh at yourself while everything's falling apart, and you're probably doing adulthood better than you think.